Thank you, Mr. Hollyburn. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I'd like to congratulate also my honourable friend for securing this important debate. The Conservative Manifesto in 2017 promised to set up a new UK Shared Prosperity Fund to replace the EU funds, with the intention that the new fund will reduce inequalities between communities across our four nations, and that the fund will be cheap to administer, low in bureaucracy, and targeted where it is needed most. So we know how to measure the promises that the Conservative government is now making. Here we are, 2.5 years later, and well, not from the manifesto, but from the referendum, and we still don't know how much funding will be available. We don't know how it will be divided across the country. We don't know what activities will be eligible for support, and we don't know who will take the decisions on how the money is to be spent. So there is a huge fear here that this will be not just a financial grab, but also a power grab, that the Conservative government will use this opportunity to reduce the funding for areas that need it most, and they will use it to claw back powers that would naturally sit with the devolved administrations. That concern is what drove us to create the all-party parliamentary group on post-Brexit funding for nations, regions and local areas. In that spirit, we worked with the Industrial Communities Alliance and we launched a national inquiry to help us understand the wide-ranging views on the key questions that I highlighted. That involved contacting a large number of organisations to submit evidence to the inquiry about what they wanted from the Shared Prosperity Fund. Respondents included local authorities, local enterprise partnerships, the TUC, including the Welsh TUC, mayoral combined authorities and devolved administrations. Such is the huge interest and concern that we received submissions from over 80 different bodies across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and many honourable members present here are members of the APPG. The report is going to be published on Friday, but I can give a brief summary of some of the key recommendations. There's an overwhelming consensus that the Shared Prosperity Fund must not comprise a penny less than what the EU would have invested in Britain from 2020 to 2024. The government must prioritise narrowing the differences in prosperity across the UK above all. In England, the funding should be allocated to local areas on the basis of a robust formula and up-to-date statistics. In Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, the UK government should respect the devolution settlement, and therefore any guidelines should be kept at a very strategic and broad level and agreed with the devolved administrations, who should keep responsibility for detailed design and delivery. These findings all reflect my own concerns, and the report has been signed off by all of the vice chairs, so it is a cross-party report that we will be sending to the relevant secretaries of state and seeking meetings for follow-up. Westminster must not use Brexit and the end of the EU's regional funding as an opportunity to shortchange the poorest parts of the UK. The UK government must not preside over a Westminster power grab whereby devolved administrations are denied the appropriate control over funds. The government's promise to launch its own consultation, I'm sure the Minister will be telling us more about that, and I understand that will be launched before Christmas. It's very important that the government takes the recommendations in our report into account, particularly as they reflect the views of over 80 organisations at the coalface of these issues. This design must not be dreamed up in Westminster or Whitehall bubbles, but it must be driven by the practitioners, the people who really know what works and what doesn't in their communities. Thank you, Mr. Hollister.